Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm so grateful that I was able to fulfill my introduction speech. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the Daily Medicine Transmission. It is August 3rd, 2021, and a change is gonna come, my friends. So I'm trying some different things here, and of course the intro music wasn't exactly queued up as perfectly as I'd like it to be, but that's okay. So welcome back to everyone who is a subscriber, a regular viewer. Thank you for being here, and if you're new here, welcome to the channel. It's great to have you here. And as always, I like to remind people that when you interact with content from an independent content creator like myself, regardless of what platform you find yourself on, when you subscribe, when you like the videos, when you share them, when you comment on them, it actually does have an influence on the AI algorithm that shares this content on the feed with new audiences. So any interaction actually does help and assist in the process of spreading this message. So if you find it helpful and inspiring, when you support the content, it actually helps get it out there to other people. So thank you in advance, and let's get right into it for today. So it's kind of cold here where I'm at on the East Coast. August is supposed to be a really hot month, and what's very interesting is that it is not very hot. It has barely broken 80 degrees in the last couple days, and of course now that my pool is on, fully online here, and we got it all set up, and now it won't even break 80 degrees. So that's been annoyingly disappointing, but certainly not the not first world problems, right? So, but as with everything, the macrocosm, the experience that you are interacting with outside of yourself in the physical is most likely some sort of reflection of what is going on in the microcosm. So I'm sure there is something to be gathered from that situation other than not being able to comfortably swim in my new pool. So, but it is kind of cold here, which is why I'm bundled up, right? I don't have any heat in my office, which is usually not a problem when it is, 80 degrees by this point or hotter. So I'm bundling up today, kind of being low key. So change is going to come. I really encourage you to listen to Sam Cooke. His song, A Change is Going to Come. It actually, I learned this from Drunk History, actually, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, that Sam Cooke, he actually wrote this song right before he was murdered. Well, he was killed accidentally, I guess is the right way to put it. So who knows, really? He certainly did not commit suicide. So there is an uptick in that type of energy right now, which is very interesting and very sad, to say the least. So, but I encourage you to listen to that song because it really was in reference to the civil rights movement and the fact that he really did feel, and he was not around to see it, but he still felt that it was coming. So I encourage you to listen to it for inspiration. And today's reading, the tide has certainly turned. And of course, we have Venus is in a trine to Uranus today. We're going to go deep into that and really unpack that. Our moon is still in Gemini. So the way that we are adapting to our reality, our emotional landscape, and how we feel is certainly not making any decisions and willing to explore the vast range of potential right now, which is making it, easy to be malleable and mutable in that way in terms of information, our communication, the possibilities that Gemini represents. So there is mutability and flexibility in the way we adapt to reality right now, whatever that reality is for us. But there does seem to be a turning of the tide. So I'm on day 2 of my 21-day commitment to Reiki attunements. I'm going to be posting my synopsis of that after this broadcast, just to kind of tap into what is changing. And it does feel like that something has, that we've turned a corner. There's so much frustration, of course, that Chiron energy. There's so much frustration, as we're going to see the moon today is in a sextile to Chiron. there has been so much frustration. There's a lot of worry, there's concern, there's stress for all different kinds of reasons, all the macro, all the way down to the micro level within each of us in our own personal journey. And we've really been tested to have faith in this process of the natural cycle unfolding. And as we're going to see in the reading just in a moment here, that change is in fact the only constant in this universe. There is, even if there is stagnation at the quantum level, there's never any stagnation. And the stillness certainly is able to, so the stillness doesn't last for long. Of course, we do have Saturn here in this point in Aquarius that is making it impossible not to find inspiration unless you are in some sort of stillness within that structure and form and being very disciplined about it, right? And so there's change is the only constant, and we're going to find that there is nothing that can stop that, right? Being part of the physical world, material world, is that reality that there is always an oscillation. We talked about this yesterday. There's always an oscillation. The wave function is always moving back and forth, contraction and release, masculine, feminine. The polarity is always changing. Even in what maybe feel like something that's so solid that can never be torn down or changed or modified, there's always change down on that level. And so something is shifting right now, and in a very material way, that is going to, bring us to a point, well, certainly not bring us, but we'll find ourselves, I think collectively, I know that I have felt it within me, and certainly there are changes manifesting outside of me at every level to show me that there is a shifting and a changing that is inevitable. Nothing can stop the cycle of time and growth. Nature, nothing can stop nature from doing what nature does. It's really about how we're going to ride that fractal as it unfolds as a conscious co-creator. But there does appear intuitively, energetically, and then reflected in the reading I'm about to give. The transmission has been one of a calm acceptance, right? That it's okay to feel stressed. It's okay to be frustrated. We can use all of these emotional experiences to really get a deeper insight onto who we are and how we react to our environment, how we respond to the circumstances around us, because that really does determine our character, doesn't it? And with Uranus back in the picture, Mercury is going to be in a square to Uranus by the end of the day. That means the Sun is going to square Uranus this week, all leading up to this Lionsgate 8-8 portal with the new moon in Leo. So there is... on the one hand, there is a reminder with Venus in that trine to Uranus of where we've come from and the strength of that lineage and our root system, our stabilization that allows us to do this work, right? There's going to be some measure of revealing, or certainly a symbol, a representation to show us that we are in fact on the right path, and that our faith in some ways, I don't want to say is rewarded, but there will be some measure of sensitivity to the material world that will be like, oh, I see where my power is now, in the face of Uranus, which is really testing our character. Our character is revealed as we brave the storm, and this is where Uranus has been. And when we go into the new moon reading at the end of the week, we're going to talk about the new moon and the major transits that are going to be in place throughout this whole next lunar cycle. Uranus is going to join the retrograde crew. So that's something to keep in mind too, that then Uranus is going to go retrograde at this degree, braving the storm, right? Putting up our hood, putting on our hat, flipping the collar, flipping the hood, and putting our head down and braving the storm. And this is the pathway of our awakening as a collective, right? Uranus is one of those transpersonal planets. They represent larger cycles that affect more than one just individual person. and very, very transpersonal. So the collective awakening is really being triggered by this very material type of storm. However you are able to find this in your own life. And this is why knowing your chart is so important, because as usual, if you understand the areas of your life that these transits are having an impact on, then you can be conscious of the areas of your life that are being impacted. So we can be conscious co-creators rather than victims of all of these situations. And the victim script is going to be just coming right back up to the surface, isn't it? Right? It's going to come right back up. It's already coming. I mean, this is something that was very easily predicted, a year and a half ago, and now it's coming to fruition, and the victim card's going to come right back out again in so many ways, and we're going to have to deal with it again because the sun is also going to come into a trine with Chiron tomorrow. So we'll get into that astrology. Let's get into the reading here and see what we're working with here. All right. So you're going to see right here is our causal factor is the change. All right there, the two of discs, the change, the harmonious natural change that is inevitable here in our material reality. So as we come into this moment here that's represented by this vertical axis of our power, we do have our causal factor of a change, a very material change, the two of discs, right? This yin and yang that is in constant interplay with each other, directing the pure material as the two, directing the pure material resources of the seed, right? That ace of discs, perhaps towards a very specific goal. Now it is now shifting and changing, whereas the seed point was just the pure manifestation of this project, this creation of material level. Now it is starting to change, right? This interchange, this interplay within the dynamic of duality here. And again, with the moon in Gemini right now, it allows us to adapt to this concept of duality within our mind, our thoughts, our conceptualization of the world outside of us, our nervous system. Remember, this is where asteroid Ceres is, our nervous system. There's a change here. And so the change is from the raw material into an actual creative process. So things are starting to move. And it's harmonious, right? It's about the natural balance of gain and loss, that there is no stagnation, that change is the only constant, and it can be a fluid, dynamic interplay, just like this card represents in the Rider-Waite traditional tarot. It is a person juggling with the figure eight. So very similar, except this is kind of turned up in a vertical way. The Ouroboros of the serpent, right? The serpent eating its tail. You can even see that the serpent's got a little crown right there. That Jupiter energy of management and a benefactor and a leader, right? Jupiter is in fact a leader. And very, very expansive, very taking up a lot of space, right? Taking up a lot of space. There's a lot of space involved here as these dynamics are interplaying and changing. So we have to accept the natural flow of changes. This is where the flow is important rather than the resistance. So this is the beginning of something. This is the causal factor coming into this moment. And so accepting this natural change. And as Venus and Uranus are in a trine today, it's an earth trine, okay? There's definitely an earth trine as part of this. And then you have Mercury in a square to Uranus, which is a fixed square, right? Leo, fixed fire, fixed earth with Taurus. That's going to really sum up the day, and it's really going to challenge us. But the Venus trine to Uranus started the day, and it really gave us a lot of structural support and foundation when it comes to our sensitivity, when it comes to our what we value, who we value, what's important in our lives, and what leads us to a place of harmony. Is it's actually a very Syrian starseed marking where Venus is right now. So if you had this position of 14 to 15 degrees in Virgo in your chart, you would have a Syrian starseed marking. So we also have this connection to Sirius, which is the starseeds who are engaged in the grid work and the energy work and the shamanic work and the communication with the physical world and the ability to manifest from vibration. This is really what it comes down to with the Sirian starseeds and the Sirian beings, what they bring to the table, what they've taught us, what they brought to us in order to have some measure of change, to how do I put this? It's our ability to ride this wave, but also to be part of the up-leveling energetically, if that makes sense, right? It's through our own practices of the shamanic practices, right? Chanting, toning, dancing, drumming, plant medicine, all of these things that change the vibration and raise it, right? They raise the frequency of our inner vibration and then the expression of it through that throat chakra. So there's a lot going on just in this card right now, but suffice it to say that this causal factor is that there is a harmonious, natural change that is inevitable, that is coming, right? As part of the cycles, large macro galactic cycles, all the way down to the quantum within us and down on a cellular level within us. These also are changing based on organic oscillation. That's just the nature of the universe, in this universe, okay? So as we move into the heart of the moment, we see the Four of Discs. Ooh, Sun in Capricorn, power, right? You can see this is the moat that's around my house. It's not really a moat, but you do have to cross a body of water to get onto my property, and it makes it very secure and very boundaried unless I choose to open the drawbridge, right? And you can see that here. There's a drawbridge coming in, which is Capricorn, and then the Sun as well is at the top of this, but there's no entry point. It's more of an exit point with the Sun in this card. And you can see there's entry points to the side. All four chemical elementals are represented: fire, water, earth, and air. And this moat, right? You can see even the gateways going into this very secure area. So the Sun in Capricorn, the Four of Discs, power, security, stability, establishment, comfort. And power grows from peace. That's really important to recognize. Power grows from peace and security, not control necessarily. That would be in its reversal when we're trying to control for things in order to, to have a power grab. Now, the Sun was just in an opposition to Saturn, not that, yesterday. And that, I think, was the turning point. We needed to get to that opposition, which was, as we saw, the spine of our kite. We need that tension between their ego consciousness that is fully bright and shining, right? With all of the potential possibilities. And we needed that tension to balance out with Saturn that is, for all of its negativity that it is, that is expressed about Saturn, it does provide the actual, framework and form of physical reality that we can't get beyond. Institutions that are based on the building and contribution from collective paradigms seem like they're so strong that they can never go anywhere. So at the heart of us, we do feel a sense of power here, that we are creating these institutional structures within ourselves or in our communities or in our families, whatever it is. And especially within our families and our small communities, right? Those bonds, those Cancerian bonds that represent the root system. We're able to contribute ourselves to growing something bigger. And this is what holds us. It's a recognition of a reward for good work at the heart of us today, that this power is here. That, like I said, secure, established, stability also allows for growth, right? You can go into this place. You can come out of it as well. But it is secure, right? And it has this flow around it that protects it, which is, emotional boundaries in some ways, right? That, because remember that Capricorn is a feminine signature. It is earth. It might be cardinal earth because so it's moving and has momentum. It is the engine of nature herself unfolding, but there is this element of receiving and allowing. And so this moat of our emotions, right, our intuition, our feeling based landscape is protecting us in some ways here. So at the heart we have this power that is really where our toroidal field is emanating from. Now, when we are looking at where we can draw our power from, the stabilization of our root system in and of itself, here's our 5 of roses. It's the garden, right? So you have these 2 children that are, so Leo, very connected to children, childlike nature, innocence, playfulness, right? And the ability to be fully yourself in this very innocent state that hasn't been, squashed by Saturn, essentially. Here is that aspect of the sun in Leo, and it's about being safe and contained within this garden, right? You have the one child who's got a slingshot. You have another child that has a magnifying glass looking at the butterfly, metamorphosis. It's curated, it's landscaped, but it's also naturally very beautiful and surrounding them. You can even think about it as the Garden of Eden in some ways, but it really does show that where we draw our personal power and stabilization is this arrival of this childlike nature within us. And there is a protection to explore and to play. This is where we really draw our actual personal power from, and what's running in the background, that subconscious that really directs the course of our attention and our thoughts and our actions is this bottom here of the reading, right? This nadir where we are rooted to the core of who we are, and it is playful, it's very childlike, it's protected, right? There's that Cancerian element too, where there is something here that is surrounding us and holding us, just like Cancer is, to allow for the expression of who we are in the Leo or the 5th house energy. So this is really at the root here. And this goes back to our faith and our trust in this whole process, to allow ourselves to kind of relax a little and reignite our joy, or certainly reconnect to a safe enough place where we can emotionally and feeling, within our feeling, actually root into where we feel safe enough to be exploratory, to be willing to play, right? This is an important place to be. So as this energy moves up through us, we reach this moment here in the heart of us of this real power in a material way, the security and establishment in the heart of us, right? In our faith, perhaps, in our own ability to create our own reality, whatever it is that we have faith and power within, or faith in. This is what is kind of, giving us this structure of power. And from here, we move up to Archangel Raphael. Look at that. This is healing and miracles all day, right? So now this is where we really have our conscious attention, where it could go, where we can make the most contribution, where we can be aware of is in the healing capacity and the miracle that Archangel Raphael represents. So number 1, Archangel Raphael is related to one of the 4 royal fixed stars, and it's Regulus, right? Just where Mars had passed only days ago, the last degree of Leo, Regulus. So we have this now at the top of our awareness right here in where our conscious attention is focused, where we can make a real contribution through our thoughts and our actions. This archangel often comes in the guise of an actual human, as you can see, because there are no wings on this individual. He's got the pink heart chakra. He's got the green orb, which is also related to the heart chakra. This is the energy of love and family and miracles and healing, right? Miracles and healing. And so this portends a time of great achievement in your personal life, whatever it is that you have been looking for, healing, either a broken heart or healing a physical illness, or a miracle in terms of having faith that, that in fact that you are protected and nurtured and contained enough to actually be in your full innocence and joy, just like in the garden. the renewal of a lost dream, perhaps, reuniting of family members or really close friends that have been disconnected from us over time, and healing, healing, healing. So you can play this role for other people, perhaps, when you are really sitting in your compassion and your forgiveness, as we're going to see. This energy is something that we can be aware of and to ask for in our conscious thoughts and our prayers, right? This is when we pray, it may be coming from our subconscious, but the thoughts that move through our mind or pass our lips in our prayers or in our setting of intention can be asking for this, to open up to this, to be able to receive. But this comes, really from I would say from a trust that we can even be open to receiving. And that means that we have to let go of like all of the restricting energy that is kind of holding us and I can attest to this for sure, which is a big part of why I started the attunements, because I can feel how bound up I've been in worry and stress on many different levels in my personal life. And of course, on the larger scale as well, there's lots to be concerned about. We have to allow this, we have to give ourselves the space. And if you go back here to this Four of Discs real quick, you see that there is in fact a space, an open space in the middle of this complex here that is flanked by all of these elements and is surrounded by this moat. And so there is space within to keep growing. And we want to acknowledge that at the heart here, that the power comes from making sure that there's still space to grow. You don't want to be so restricted and closed in that there is no space. And so this is giving us the opportunity to allow and invite this in, to ask for it, to pray for it, to be aware that miracles happen, healings happen, and we have to create the space for it. And this is showing us that we actually do have the capacity to do this right now. And it doesn't come from any outside circumstance necessarily giving us the permission. We have to cultivate that within us. And it's been a real challenge, especially because the Virgo season is upon us, right? It is going to be the day of the full moon, the new moon, the full moon, the day of the next full moon. After that full moon, the sun moves into Virgo, right? And so with Venus here and Mars here, they are setting the stage for us. They are the Emperor and the Empress coming together. The Venus as the Empress is, conditioning the medium of this. Mars is coming in and giving us the courage and the ambition to go deep into the soil. And when the sun comes here, that'll be this full expression of this. And so of Virgo, right? Of the path of discipleship, essentially. So, but we have this here now. I feel like that there has been a conscious effort on the part of humanity and as a collective to make this shift. Now, with the change is the causal factor, meeting this energetic axis here, we have a reasonable expectation that there is going to be a reconciliation of opposites on an emotional level. The Six of Cups. Pleasure, the sun in Scorpio. So we have Jupiter, which is kind of like, our second sun, right? It's got the density, potential density that it could have been a sun, but not quite. It didn't activate its main sequence. So Jupiter, kind of like a sun in some ways. And then you have the sun, which is Sun in Capricorn here as the Four of Discs, and then you have the Sun in Scorpio, which is pleasure. We've talked about this card before because it's come up a couple times this summer. Deep emotions that have passed the depths of pain and fear, and so we can enjoy the pleasures of that harmony, of that reconciliation, and the balance comes from returning to inner source. And so there's a reasonable expectation in this moment here that with the change, a very natural, harmonious change, the interplay of these opposites coming to meet this very strong, but also very open, energetic axis here, we can expect to have this reconciliation of opposites, to have balance and harmony by returning to our inner source and the deep emotions that have passed that allow us to even enjoy this in the first place. So something has shifted, certainly. And, everybody's kind of experiencing it in their own timeline, but as a collective, something is shifting. We are meeting, and when it meets this power, this empowered axis here, we get to experience the pleasure in that moment of harmony when we come through the depth of such pain, which the Five of Cups really represents. We've seen that a couple times in the recent past. So if we're struggling here and we need some inspiration or some guidance, first, up in the air. Now, I have a system here that I use when I do these readings. It's very specific, and it allows for me to periodically test my deeper innate and how it factors into actually picking these cards. And I don't really pick them. They just kind of fall out as I'm shuffling. And this is the process that I use. Now, some people, they shuffle the deck, they cut it, and then they go one after the other into their positions. And that's certainly nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how most people do it. I have a little bit of a different process. Now, why I want to say that is because this card tried to come out come out in a different context. And I was like, no, I'm going to put it back because it didn't come out like I said, I have a system. And so it didn't quite come out in the location that it needed to. But then it came out right here in this position. I was like, yes, this is where it needs to be. So up in the air, when it's reversed like this, okay, as you see here is our guidance. So up in the air, we have to trust the situation. So now what this is signaling in its reversal is that the situation that had been up in the air is coming back down to earth now, right? We can see everything much more clearly now because it's time for the balloon that had been up there and kind of we can see it. It's coming back down right in front of our faces. And once this enters the picture, even if it's not the whole picture, it brings more influence to bear in some way once we are involved as well. And so the trust that we held in the situation has borne fruit. This is reminding us, this is a guidance point, this is a support point in terms of a symbol to show things are coming back down to be seen now. And if we're struggling with feeling safe, if we're struggling to feel like we are held by nature, by that which that Cancerian element that holds us in order for us to be more naturally ourselves, exploratory, maybe a little mischievous, right? That the Bart Simpson character with the slingshot, and then you have Lisa Simpson who's got the magnifying glass doing the discovery, down to the small things, right? If we realize here that things are coming back down, if we are looking at the balloon coming back down, we're going to see so much more than we did before and realize that trusting that situation is actually panning out right now. Having faith in ourselves, having faith in divine source, however you characterize that, having faith in nature and the natural cycles unfolding, and having faith in the process is really going to allow us. And having some example, right? Looking for something, and I'm not saying looking for something that's not there. I mean, really opening our eyes and seeing things that are coming back down to our awareness in a very clear way now. And what this also goes along with the penguin is that the period of darkness is passing, right? And I know that seems counterintuitive to what we're seeing out there in the news or whatever, right? Either alternative news or, it's starting to all coalesce now into the same message or certainly the same trajectory, which should have you just curious, I would say. And again, that's coming back down into reality. So we've known that things are coming down the pipeline, and now they're coming down the pipeline and we're all seeing it now. It's coming back down to earth. And I know this seems counterintuitive to the period of darkness because a lot of us are actually feeling that the darkness is growing, and it's not growing. It's just because it's coming into our field of vision now that it seems bigger. When it's further away, it seems smaller, and we're just oh, but it's coming in And now we see it. And it doesn't mean that it's actually getting bigger, any bigger than it is. That's an illusion, right? That's an illusion of perception. But the fact that it's so in our faces is a pretty good indication that it's on its way out, because we have to accept that we're going to either move past this or we are going to participate in it. And so this reading is not for people who are going to participate in it. This reading is for those that are ready, that are seeing it for what it is now. Maybe didn't see it before, maybe have been seeing it before, but also acknowledging that this is a really good indicator that it's passing. And so what has been happening has contributed significantly to our collective spiritual growth, right? That Rahu, the North Node, where we are going collectively in order to evolve, plus Uranus being the trigger of that, plus Pluto being the transformational energy that allows for that, right? The death and destruction, the degrading of the natural world, right? The natural decay that Pluto represents. We all go to the underworld at some point. Like, this is why Asclepius or Ophiuchus was ultimately rendered, he was taken away, he was killed by the gods, but also immortalized, because that's what he was doing. He was utilizing his serpent medicine and all of his tools and knowledge to actually raise people from the dead. And so that caused a big problem, because that is disrupting the natural flow of things and needed to be remedied. Now, I'm not asserting any kind of opinion about that. I'm just telling the story. So what we're going through has contributed significantly to spiritual growth, all of these experiences. And so what it has done is given us the ability to be ready to face the challenges with inner strength and courage, because that's going to be part of this period of darkness passing. Because the darkness is just the unconsciousness about all of it. It's the light that comes in, that shines, that shows us the shadow for what it is. And so the period of darkness is passing, just like, a penguin. The male penguin is the one that sits on the egg for, months and months at a time, and just kind of like all hovering around. And then when it hatches, it's it's also the male that takes care of the penguin. So that's kind of a side, but you can think about it that way. The period is passing now. So it's time to start making conscious and deliberate choices and make that a priority. We have to make that a priority. And so if we're struggling to feel rooted and stabilized in this natural, that we are protected in some way, that we are cared for, and this allows for us to be more in that Leo energy of childlike nature. And this is not about being ignorant. This is not about being, immature. This is about just tapping into the full expression of who we are that's unadulterated, right? That's it's a funny word. But I think it applies here. So there's a lot of this ready to face the challenge, knowing the period of darkness is passing, because that has gotten us up to speed with everything so far, and that the balloon is coming down into our definitive awareness. So it looks bigger than it actually has. It looks bigger than it was, but it's not any different. It's just a matter of perception now. So as we move up into our conscious awareness, remember compassion and forgiveness. I cannot stress this enough. And this is really hard. I've gotten into so many conversations, even debates and arguments about judgment versus discernment and compassion and forgiveness. So what I want to say about this, when we come to Archangel Raphael, right? I mean, we have to allow this energy in if we expect a miracle, right? We can't expect a miracle of healing or reconciliation if we can't even tap into this compassion and forgiveness, right? So forgiveness, number one, means taking responsibility for your judgments rather than pretending they don't exist. Oh, I don't judge anybody. Bullshit. We all do. And so we have to get real with ourselves about where that's at, because it's those judgments that lead us to making decisions out of our shadow, right? When we acknowledge we have judgments, when we acknowledge them and are real with ourselves, then of course we can then let in forgiveness. So, because they are damaging us, right? And this conversation, this is really the crux of it as far as I'm concerned. It's my personal opinion, is this whole judgment versus discernment and, taking a self-righteous position. So the next step is releasing those judgments. So first you have to acknowledge that you have them, right? You have to acknowledge that you have them, be forgiving on yourself, being compassionate towards yourself, that you're a human being, and that we all struggle with this. This is part of the Sagittarian South Node, Sagittarian element here, and Jupiter now has moved into Aquarius, right? Going from all this expanse, oh, so beautiful, all of the possibilities. Jupiter is like, look, I give you whatever you want, come back into Aquarius. Now it's singular, right? The laser focus of Aquarius. It's just the energy that moves through. And that is not an easy position for Jupiter. It's not, I would say it's not necessarily a bad position. I think it's just, it just shows you where the focus really is. So the next step is releasing the judgment, right? Having compassion and forgiveness for yourself. And when you release judgment, you can still be discerning, but when you release the judgment, when you release that, self-righteousness in some ways, when you allow compassion and forgiveness to be your top priority, well, then you can expect to have this infusion of miracles and blessings and healings and renewal of a lost dream and all of these other things that we want to come in. We have to make space for it. And judgment takes up so much freaking room on our hard drive, right? We have to it's just like a bunch of crap files that we hold on to, and we don't need them. Not saying we can't be discerning. We should be discerning, so we don't allow ourselves to be victimized when there's no need to. Now, along with that, part of this compassion and forgiveness, the reflection. So we had number 18, which is up in the air, right into the next, which is number 19 in the reflection. This is suggesting that there is a direct line to our psychic and intuitive nature with this card, and we become more aware of our emotions and we're reflective about them. Here we go, right back to the judgment, right back to compassion and forgiveness. Right? What's the difference between our intuitive voice and our lower emotional compulsions? I'll give you an example. The intuitive voice is always affirming, never judgmental, never focusing on your faults, but also very real with you, right? There's no judgment, but it's also just like that. It's no judgment, but it's very discerning. And oftentimes we will push back against it when we don't necessarily feel like our ego is being supported by our higher self and intuitive voice. Emotional compulsions are really easy. I don't have enough. I'm scared. So I'm going to compensate by doing this, that, or the other thing. I don't feel empowered. I'm going to try to take power from someone else. You're worthless. You're nothing. Nobody values you. I mean, you can just go down the list of that voice in your head, and we all have it. We all have it. Okay. And this is the shadow, right? This is the shadow that often is hidden when the moon is dark, as it is getting darker and darker and darker, because now we're in our waning moon phase and balsamic moon phase. So it's going to be reduced down, but also very dark. This is suggesting here, this is showing us that the moon is full. It is shining. It is reflecting light back onto the surface of our unconscious, right? That water. And we can see clearly. We can see clearly in our own emotional state what is going on in our subconscious. So if we are, this compulsive emotional energy of whatever that voice is going around and around, supporting this idea that you're not good enough, you don't have enough, whatever it is, we can see it. And when we see it, we can be like, oh, that's different than the voice that is affirming and is our higher self giving us, love and direction and, compassion, and forgiveness, right? Again, when we bring these elements together in terms of our conscious awareness, where our attention is going, we are inviting in the healing and the miracle that Archangel Raphael represents. And remember that last degree of Leo, fixed star Regulus. What is the Sabian symbol? An unsealed letter. Everything is meant to be shared. It is not meant to be hoarded. All of the energy that comes from our Kundalini awakening, for instance, right? The energy that is the unadulterated, pure, unconditional, shining forward of ourselves is always meant to be shared. It's not meant to be hoarded. And so when we we have the opportunity here to take on this sharing, and also to be an agent of this sharing as well, depending on where you find yourself. But this is so beautiful. I mean, it's really, like I said, it's really affirming, because it's been pretty dark the last week or so, and people have been really brought to their knees in some ways about what's going on, and if they can really trust themselves and really trust their ability to address and handle where this darkness that's coming right into our field of vision, that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and trusting that this is just part of the natural cycle of it passing through, right? And so again, we're going to have to make some choices here about what dimension are we going to inhabit more often: the 3D material loss and gain, or the 5D, which is unification and light and love, right? And we have to, many of us are straddling that, and it's really exhausting. I had an email exchange with a potential client yesterday, and that was what that person had said, that it's just exhausting to be separating, and it's because they're not separating anymore. You either are fully in material, or you are fully in spiritual, or you have found a way to make them you have found the way that they coincide with each other, and so that you're not, because that is the ascension process, right? The awakening of humanity is the spiritual embodied in the material fully. So that's the goal. And this is really affirming that we're on the right path, even though it's going to appear to us that it's getting a lot darker. It's really just because it's coming into our face now. So that is a really beautiful reading. I hope that you guys are getting the transmission the way that I am, because it is like, it's like a sigh, right? It's like okay, it's going to be okay, right? That doesn't mean that we should slack. Oh no. I mean, Venus and Mars in Virgo aren't going anywhere. And Mercury in a square to Uranus, the Sun in a square to Uranus soon, Sun trine Chiron. There's more challenges along the way, but this is a moment here of just like, oh yes, the reconciliation of these opposing emotional states or feelings are, we have this opportunity now to really tap into that, and to almost expect it if we are aligned with all of this other energy. So we move on here to our chart for today. I'm checking in with the chat. Meow Meg is here, giving us all of the star energy, starseed energy, of course. So good to see you, Meg. I hope you're doing well where you are. You look like you are, according to social media. So here is our chart for today. So we're looking at the 3rd of August. Our moon is in Gemini right now. We'll be in Gemini all day today, all the way up through tomorrow afternoon, East Coast time, where it will go void, of course, at 3:30 p.m. And then by 5:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the moon will move into Cancer. So we will get that opportunity, just like we do every single month, every single lunar month. The waning moon, the balsamic moon, passes its new moon point and gives us a reminder about what it is we set intentions for at the beginning of the cycle. So as the moon is waning, right, especially the balsamic, right before the new moon, it's not a great time to be executing anything or making definitive decisions. It's really much more conducive to the lunar energy to allow in and to go into that stillness. And thankfully, I can't believe I'm saying this about Saturn. Thankfully, Saturn is where Saturn is, because it is making it impossible to get around this dynamic here of just, the quiet moment that we receive the inspiration. So as let's go back in time a little bit here, because our moon, speaking of Saturn, was in a trine to Saturn. Our moon was in a trine to Saturn earlier this morning, right, in Gemini. So yesterday the moon passed Rahu, was in a asteroid Juno, is now direct. I can tell that transition really had a huge impact. really strong. Asteroid Juno, for whatever reason, and maybe it's because it is in conjunction with Antares and it's been hovering around the south node for so long as it's stationed and getting slower and slower, it has had a real impact on where we see our responsibility and our contractual obligations, and the concept of betrayal right on Antares is so strong that we could really use that momentum moving forward if we choose to. This is why having conscious choice is so important right now. Otherwise, we just get pulled into the the whirlpool of somebody else's intention right now, and collective paradigm with Sagittarius, and especially where the South Node is. So that is really strong. So the moon did pass this point of Rahu in opposition to Ketu and Juno, and is now past it. So now it is in this trine. Not now, it was very early on into the passing over to the third, was in a trine to Saturn in Aquarius. So we have this air trine that the moon is in, and this is again, this newly opened lands offer the pioneer new opportunities for experience. This is the Sabian symbol of where the moon is in this trine. So the power and joy of new beginnings, right? So if we allow ourselves to really see that side of things, the potential, the future, where we're going, right? Because Gemini is both one and the same, the past and the future, right? The same, because really it's just a cycle. So the past and the future come back around to meet each, you know what I mean? Like there's no separating them, but they do appear in the nature of our reality to be distinctly different. So we're looking towards the future at this degree. Newly open lands offer the pioneer new opportunities. So in a trine to Saturn, right? This functional, this functional stability, this traction, this harmonization that really requires no input from us at all, is, if we can see where, especially where Saturn is, again, if we've allowed ourselves that moat within us, right? This really firm boundary between Saturn and everything else, basically, right? If we allow ourselves this firm boundary in some ways, and Saturn opposed the sun is not easy. We saw what that was yesterday, the disappointment, the sorrow of Saturn in Libra, right? The Three of Swords. It's not an easy transit, but like I said, that was the spine of the kite. This gives us the stability in order to fly. And this is a way we can really use these oppositions to our advantage, rather than like getting broken as a result or being lopsided. So if we are allowing ourselves the influx of inspiration in a quiet moment here where Saturn is, in terms of the institutions that form our reality, either inside, and I'd say inside, right? Retrograde Saturn. It allows us to see into the future. It allows us to see these new opportunities, the power and joy of new beginnings, because in that moment of Saturn, in the quiet, seemingly in the stagnation, it's really the 0 point that allows in the inspiration. And then we can see the potential. We can feel it with the moon. From there, Venus comes into its trine right after that with Uranus. So I want to talk about this because this is, like I said, this is a Syrian starseed marking where Venus is. And it's important that we revisit the degree that Uranus is in, because this is the degree that it's stationing retrograde in the next lunar cycle. Okay, so in 15 degrees Taurus, we're looking at a person with their head covered with a hat, muffled against the cold, right? And a person braves a storm. And it's the courage needed to meet the crises precipitated by what? Social ambition, because you can't get away from that ego wanting things when you live in a material world. It's kind of how it goes. So our character is revealed under adverse circumstances. And with Uranus, this is the collective third eye. This is the triggering of our awakening, is in this type of activity, in developing the courage we need to face this crisis, to face these adverse circumstances, right? So when it's in a trine to Venus, Venus at this point here in Virgo is about to make the transition from our character to the education and training, right? And it's this degree is that changeover point. So there is an acceptance of something. We have to remind ourselves that it's the strength of the roots that produces beautiful flowers, that produces the fruit that bears the seed, right? Root strength. Where do we develop our root strength? In Cancer, right? That is the new moon energy. We're going to get a chance to revisit that in the next couple of days. That energy that is the Cancerian energy, and the moon is at home in Cancer. She's going to be very powerful. We're going to have a very deep intuitive connection. Remember that reflection card as the gift here. If we want to allow in the gifts and the blessings and the healing that Archangel Raphael gives to us, is available to us, we do need to, on some level, be able to get very deep into that intuition. Allow our roots to be stable. So now that Venus is here in Virgo, now that I'm saying this out loud, and I've been kind of, I wouldn't say negative, but being very realistic about Venus as an archetype in the Virgo sign, because she doesn't really want to act. She pulls, she's that magnetic. So this first part that Venus has been part of in Virgo has been more stable and magnetic, right? Pulling towards us, acknowledging our sensitivity to the value of who we are and our root system. Is it strong? Is it have the strength to do the job, right? Or is there fungus in the soil? I mean, anybody that does any kind of horticulture or gardening knows exactly what I'm talking about, because if there's a fungus in the soil and your roots are exposed to it, they're not going to produce, at least not as much as you want them to. So those who act with determination and courage and discrimination while following in the footsteps of some lineage, right? Because that's the thing about Virgo. It is the individual conditioning themselves, purifying themselves, disciplining themselves, putting those habits, those commitments, those 21-day commitments, for instance, into form. It's based off of a lineage, of a line, it's not you think of yourself as a plant, right? You came from a seed, but that seed came from someone else, right? Your ancestral lineage, your spiritual lineage, your starseed lineage, Syrian starseed, I would say, very, very clear here. When we act with determination, courage, and discrimination, that's part of the Virgo archetype. Discriminating form from, there's a definitive form. It's an earth sign. When we're ready and we're following in the footsteps of those predecessors, of that lineage that we came from, and in a healthy way, in a way that is committed to being the best version of ourselves. When one has fully proven themselves on the battlefield where you meet your past, right? It's going to try to block you. And there's all those emotional compulsions again, right? All those emotional compulsions, that little voice in your head that's just like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, and people don't like you, right? You are no use to anything here, right? That little voice that sets us up constantly. Our past, right? The mistakes we've made, the flaws that have been exposed, all of these things. When we meet our past, it's going to try to block us from actually growing. And this degree is that we receive something. We receive something to show us that we have actually fulfilled our deeds, right? The deeds well done, showing us, hey, you've gotten this far, and I'm going to give you, there's going to be some measure of revealing or giving, and there's Raphael again, the giving of something, right? Woven out of the spiritual threads that shows us that we in fact have made the commitment and have actually flowered in a line of ancestors by accepting responsibility for a much larger context, right? We're just one piece in this larger field of fruit-bearing trees, for instance, and there will be some measure here. And this trine to Uranus, this structural foundation with Uranus that is testing us every step of the way to awaken through the adversity. There's something here, and this change, it's going to come, and it's going to show us where we have done what we needed to do and what deeds have been well done. And it's our root strength that produces the beautiful flowers. If our roots aren't strong, then there is no hope for bearing fruit, right? And that's okay. People are going to make their decisions either in the material or in their higher self level to work on these things where they need to. But if it's strictly based in a 3D way, it's probably not going to last very long. And I say that with a lot of heaviness with my own situation, right? And so, but it's important to realize what is happening here. So, but there's support here. There's a structural support here that is really available to us if we accept it, right? And this trine to Uranus is a beautiful opportunity. And this happened overnight, right? 3:00 Eastern Standard Time, midnight on the West Coast, right? So this was really setting the tone for how the evening and certainly like the early morning as we go across the pond here has been unfolding. So we see that Venus, and I know that was long, but we really need to talk about Uranus because it's going to come back into the picture on the surface very soon here. By the end of today, really. And so the moon comes along, and from right there was in a sextile to the sun, right? Sextile to the sun, 12 degrees Leo, 12 degrees your Gemini, right? This is, again, the reconciliation of opposites. This is a harmonization that comes from investment, right? We have to actually act on it some way. And where is the sun in Leo? Well, we really do just want to kind of like kick back and enjoy each other like the two little kids in the garden, right? We want to have a fancy garden party, right? Where we can just, like I said, kick back, let go of the pretenses of our adult nature, like all of our responsibilities, that Saturn thing, right? And I'm not saying that we should totally give up on that. What I'm saying is that if we want to liberate ourselves from the ghosts of the past, right, which is what's going to be blocking our way as we try to as we continue to purify and reconstitute ourselves, especially in terms of what's valuable to us in our relationships in the world around us. If we want to liberate ourselves from the ghosts of the past and totally liquidate the past so we can again move towards the future, right? We can invest this energy of the sun that is bringing us back to just being ourselves, right? And being willing to enjoy just being ourselves, and a collection of people that is just themselves and really wants to enjoy the company of other individuals being themselves. And we can invest that into how we're feeling mutually, right? With the moon in Gemini, letting go of the past, liberating ourselves from the ghosts of the past. We let go of all of these karmic contracts when we kind of commit to expressing ourselves through this moment of just pure joy and camaraderie in some ways, right? When we all show up as like the children in the garden, then we can just have a good time, and that allows us to feel the ability to let go of the past and move towards the future, right? There's that sextile with the sun and the moon today. And as the moon continues, I mean, it's just making connections all the way through. So then comes into another sextile. Lots of sextiles with our Gemini moon today because there's a lot of fire. Comes into a sextile with Chiron. So the same basic idea, this reconciliation that comes from an investment of harmonious forces, right? If Chiron retrograde is bringing it to a very obvious dynamic within us of where our frustration is, and that lower compulsion of just like, I want it now. I feel the potential within me to grow, and I want that growth to be here now, right? And it's triggering all of these victim wounds, right, of having to do something or having to be a savior and all the Chiron things. And it's very much within us, right? You can feel it every single time of just like, oh, I got to do something. Oh, I got to get to the fifth dimension or whatever it is, right? You can feel the aggravation and the frustration to get there, and it's just so embedded in us right now, and it's so obvious. And so when we when we find fulfillment individually, right, especially in terms of how we feel and our emotional capacity, when we find individual fulfillment in performing some social function to which, you could say some prestige is attached, but some sort of skill set that is really valuable, when we get individual fulfillment by performing something that we have been practicing this whole time, we can invest that again into where Chiron is, and again be able to heal from these wounds, to at least see them for what they are, and to also provide inspiration for other people who are maybe stuck here. From here, the moon comes into a sextile, again, another sextile, this time with Mercury in Leo. So it went from the sun back to Chiron and now back to Mercury. And this is, in terms of our manifestation capacity, our mind, our communication, all of the Hermes-related energy of Mercury, we are really yearning to actualize ourselves through our voice, through our expression, through information and ideas, right? We are feeling it. A soul that wants to be actualized, and it could go either way, right? It could be madness or it could be joyous. It really just depends on, and it will be dramatic regardless. Excuse me. It'll be dramatic regardless, right? Because that is the signature of Leo, is the drama, right? So either way you look at it, it'll be a combust kind of like release. And so the moon, again, we can invest this energy of, being able to span the dialectic, right? Bridging physical space and social distinctions to communicate directly, telepathically. Again, we want to be able to share this message. We want to be able to have a direct connection emotionally and intuitively between each other. And when we can do that, it allows for the ruler of Mercury, or Gemini, which is Mercury, that has this really combust energy. It's about to be released. We can apply this more, we can adapt to this situation by having it, we have a direction for it, right? We have something we can express ourselves through, which is being able to have a direct connection to each other, to telepathically, right? To bridge the gap of physical space and even our social distinctions, to communicate directly with each other, right? So we have to get past all of the pretenses and all of these labels that we have adopted as a result of them being kind of foisted upon us. We have to get past all of that so that we can invest that into where Mercury is, because otherwise it will be madness. If we don't have a means to communicate with each other, even emotionally, or try to have more of a telepathic, empathic communication with each other, then yeah, Mercury is just going to combust. Our minds are just going to combust in this yearning and just be released into madness, I think. And that's going to find its own, how do I say this? It's going to find its own place within your life. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, it could certainly be more dramatic depending on what's going on in your own chart than for other people. But what I will say is that this is important to wrap your head around, because when Mercury comes into its square with Uranus it's going to depend if it's joyous or madness that comes up against the square of Uranus, because that's going to make a big difference of how we address that friction, okay? Then the moon comes into a square. I mean, it's just constant, and we're still just right now, right? This is still in the early morning hours. So a lot has happened while we were sleeping or very early in the morning that has led us to this point. So now we see here By noon, we're going to, 1 p.m., we're really going to see the things start to shift with the moon in a square to Venus in Virgo. So this mutable square. So again, this is that moment of changeover where we go from discovery and exploration to exteriorizing it somehow, right? We want to dramatize our cause. We've discovered some things, and we want to convince other people of the validity of it. And so we get up on our pulpit and we express ourselves. And the square here with Virgo is that we are going to have to come face to face with our own primal self in this moment. And this is where the energy is going to shift, right? This is about the time where the energy shifts with this square. Because this is going to be interesting, because on some level, we're going to want to be like, oh, what have I discovered? I need to get everybody on board with the good word, right? And this is how we feel. Remember, it's a transient moment. It's going to pass very quickly because the moon moves quickly, right? This square with Venus, on the other hand, Venus in Virgo, that is now, we have to face our primal animal nature, right? We have a karmic confrontation in this square. And so this is where the energy is going to really shift, and we're going to start feeling real resistance to things. But in the meantime, we have this moment here of leading up to this point where a lot of things have been giving us opportunities to align ourselves, to make the most of this energy, to apply it appropriately, and to find some real empowerment and be open to what's coming. Because and then as the day ends, right, we're going to have Mercury come into a direct square with Uranus, as we see here. Okay, one more second. There we go. This is by the end of the day, Mercury square Uranus. And, Mercury in this degree here is moved past the yearning and is now expressing itself in a very dramatic way, right? It's like a parade float, right? And it's going down the street and everybody's cheering, and you're just like, yeah, look at me. I wanted to actualize myself, and now I'm gonna show everybody what I did and showcase it it's so Leo, right? So dramatic and so diva-like, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's great. We all have Leo in our chart, and some people more than others. And so it's important to understand how much this is an important element to being a sovereign person, is to be fully engaged in who you are and be willing to share it, right? That is that Regulus aspect of the sharing. But this square, and it's happened already before, when Mars and Venus were here at this very same degree, because Uranus was also at the same degree when they were in square. It's like turning the corner in the parade route, and then you see this tornado funnel right in front of you, and you're like, oh no, now what am I gonna do? And so by the end of today, we're going to have to face this, right? And like I said, this is the balloon coming back down. This is the period of darkness that seems bigger than it really is, because it's just up in our faces now. And when we talk about Mercury, we're talking about the realm of the mind, conceptualization, our nervous system, our thoughts, our communication, right? This is all of those aspects, our consciousness, our conscious awareness, and how we interface with our reality outside of us is mitigated and mediated by Mercury. It is the logos, and it moves rapidly, right? Mercury moves the fastest around the sun, and so it's going to be very and is on the other side of the sun from where we are, right? And is actually probably passing, from what I understand, passing right into the center of the sun. So you have Mercury in the center of the sun, on the other side of it from us, directly going through the sun, which is the ruler of Leo. And it's just spectacular, right? Spectacular. Look at me. Look at what we're doing. This is great. Crowd of cheering people. And then you turn the corner and you're like, shit, there's a really big tornado that we're going to have to deal with. And that's where we get to really see the release of this combust energy and where it's going to take us in our mental sphere. And remember, the mental sphere ultimately is what's responsible for, manifestation. Attention, power flows where attention goes, right? And it is starting in the subconscious, but by the time it makes it to the conscious mind, it's already got its own energy pattern, its own template, and it's ready to be manifested. So make sure that you're aware of that as we embark on a very challenging end of the day, from what I can tell. Now, of course, these squares are where we learn the most, right? The friction and these cross purposes is where we really learn and grow. And so this is something, again, to embrace as opposed to resist, because the more we resist these things, the more we're just kind of like recreating the environment to show it to us over and over and over. So, my friends, I am going to leave it there for today. That is the transmission for August 3rd, 2021. And so if you're interested in a reading, if you're interested in energetic support for this process, Reiki attunements and Reiki treatments can be done, the healing attunements, not the master attunements. No attunements will be done distance-wise. Some people do that. I will not. And I don't think that they should be. So that's for a one-on-one. That's like for an actual in-person class. But healing attunements and sessions can be done distance-wise because Reiki is the highest source of energies. Therefore, it transcends time, space, location, dimensions, whatever. So if you want support or you want to understand your chart and how this is all impacting you and maybe where things are going for you, you can book a reading through catalystenergies.net. Link in the description box below. You can follow Catalyst Energies on Facebook and Telegram currently, and that is where I am posting my daily reflections and synopsis for my 21-day commitment to Reiki attunements. And I invite you to do the same, to share, to be part of the process as well, because it does take about 3 weeks to institute a new habit. So when we push past, that little voice in our head that's just like, no, I'm just going to go do something else, or no, this is not going to actually do anything for me, we actually grow and change, right? And we flower. We blossom into the person that we came here to be. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Take very good care of yourselves today. I'll see you tomorrow for the daily transmission. Bye.